Less than 12 hours after I sat in front of a pleased but not elated Arne Slot after watching his team get through to the League Cup final, we are back in front of him again, this time ready to talk about Plymouth and the FA Cup. Now, my suspicion is that his mind was already on this game last night, because although we expect to see lots of fringe players, there's still plenty of interesting team selection discussions to be had. Now, one fringe player who won't be involved is Morton, who we found out has got a shoulder injury, and that bred a really interesting discussion about how Liverpool report injuries. That's something that we will be discussing later. We'll also be discussing the breakout star of Conor Bradley and whether or not he now needs to be rested, considering Trent Alexander-Arnold will also miss this Plymouth game. We'll be discussing all of that once we get out of the bleeding wind and back to the lab. Oh, I tell you, it's bloody windy out there. Thankfully, I'm back now safely inside. No more wobbling camera. Apologies if that put you off a little bit. But we are here, ready to go through everything Arne Slot said before the big game at the weekend against Plymouth. And we will start with contract news, because although Slot still didn't answer the question, they tried to sneak a few in there. Both Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk's futures were spoken about, and the future beyond them potentially. And Slot delivered once again with a smile, made it clear that he hopes that their futures are still with Liverpool beyond the end of the season. But for those of you who've heard reports saying that this is done and that is done, there was no confirmation, and nor will there be on those things. Something that I've heard independently is that I can guarantee you that the club are not briefing any particular journalists in regarding this matter. So if there are stories out there that say that this is done and that is done, then these are either coming from people on the player side, or they're probably not worth paying attention to. I'll just tell you that for free. So the next big thing we always talk about at the beginning of this show is injuries. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth on these injuries, because they will form a part of the top takeaways that are coming a little bit later on. But suffice to say that Trent Alexander-Arnold will not make it for the Plymouth game, and we heard that Morton has injured his shoulder and he may be out for a few weeks as well, which is obviously a big blow for him, because he would have really hoped to be involved within this game. But that kind of leads us straight into the top takeaways. So, top takeaway number one, keep an eye on the right back. Now, this is something that we normally tell opponents when they're playing Liverpool, whether it is Trent Alexander-Arnold or Conor Bradley, who had a fantastic offensive display against Spurs last night. But the reason I say this is because with Trent Alexander-Arnold unlikely to, well, he's not playing against Plymouth, and that does obviously put his participation in the derby into doubt, with it being just 3 days later. That probably means that Conor Bradley may not start this game against Plymouth either, with a view to him being fresh and ready for that game if needed. So then the question becomes, who is going to be the right back? Now, Liverpool's third and fourth choice right backs are normally Joe Gomez and Jarell Quansah. However, considering this game against Plymouth, you would expect those two, if fit, to be playing the centre back. So, who will be the right back? Is this going to be one of the situations where we see Wataru Endo come back into the centre back and one of those two becomes a right back? Or perhaps we get to see a little bit more of Amaro Nallo, who obviously had a very unfortunate debut away in Eindhoven in which he got red carded. I would quite like to see him, to be honest with you. I know that Plymouth Argyle are a championship side, but they are at the bottom of the championship, so you'd think that they're not a team whose goal scoring prowess is that high. I think if you're a young guy like Nallo, who had a really disappointing debut, the quicker you can get another game under your belt, the better. So I would love to see him given an opportunity, even if it's not from the start. Maybe he comes on later on in the game. But with the absence of Morton from the midfield stocks, maybe there's an argument to say that the trio who started in midfield in Eindhoven, namely McConnell, Endo and Harvey Elliott, will get that start again, and therefore Nallo does have a chance of getting the start in the game. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's fascinating the way that Slot will decide to juggle his pack, because as we all know, this derby game is the most important one on the horizon. Now, Plymouth, while you never want to lose a football match, it's nowhere near as important as that game in midweek. And if Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't fit to play against Plymouth, do you want to throw him straight back in to that fervent derby atmosphere? I'm not 100% sure you do. So that increases the opportunity and the possibility that Conor Bradley will be the man getting that start, and therefore he probably won't be anywhere near Plymouth. Top takeaway number 2, there's more to injury reporting than we maybe realised. Now, I mentioned that Tyler Morton has suffered a new injury. It was an interesting little kind of sideshow between Arne Slot and press officer Tony Barrett, where Slot looked at Tony to say, is this all right for me to say, when someone asked him exactly what Tyler had done and how long he'd be out for, which goes to show that there clearly is an overriding tactic to how Liverpool divulge injury news. Now, this is something that has frustrated quite a few fans in the past, particularly when there's been a vagueness as to what players have done, how long they're going to be out for, etc., etc. So it's clear, like I say, that this is a defined tactic by Liverpool not to give out too much information. The why behind it is still up for debate though, because obviously this could be something where maybe the club don't want to put pressure on the players to be held to a specific return date, which then sometimes can end up getting extended and extended. Or is it simply that they don't want to give their opponents any previous ideas as to who may well be in the team, who's a fit and available and who isn't? Either way, it's kind of interesting to me, because the reaction to this from people outside, the fans, and some people in the media as well, kind of goes to show where we are as a society and as a culture. I think all of us have just got a little bit too used to getting all the information all the time. There are some things that some of us just aren't meant to know, and this is probably one of them. It's interesting that the club have been so guarded with this kind of thing, and people have taken it as a bit of a personal affront. It's like, well, why can't we know? What are they up to? Why are they hiding it from us, the fans, the people who deserve to know? Maybe even fancy football team players. But obviously none of that matters in the real, in the understanding of exactly what they're trying to do, which is win football matches. Our opinions, our thoughts, our feelings really don't matter. So if it's up to them, if they would decide they want to kind of hide exactly what an injury a player has and how long they're going to be out for. The fact that they didn't feel the need to do that with Tyler though, I think is telling, because it kind of goes to show he's probably not going to be massively involved between now and May, regardless of how long he's going to be out injured for. But for those of you who get frustrated when Liverpool don't tell you exactly how long a player's going to be out, I'm afraid you're just going to have to put up with it. Top takeaway number 3, the reasons behind Arne's big squad campaign. Now, Arne Slot went out of his way to once again argue for Premier League allowing larger squads and 23 players rather than just 20 players for their games. Now, this is something, as I say, that he mentioned in the previous game with regards to potentially allowing more people to be involved. And when I spoke about it on Wednesday, it was more through the prism of squad chemistry and keeping everybody involved and making sure there's no dissent on the edges and the fringes of the squad, which still is an important thing. But Slot kind of drilled down a little bit more into exactly why he's so keen for this. And it was more to do with the young players, the academy players, because there are lots of players, most of whom we'll get to see over the course of this game with Plymouth, who've been training well, training hard with the first team, who maybe don't get a chance to experience some of the big games and some of the big nights. You'd like to train Leone, Rio and Gamoa, James McConnell, all these players, Amara Nello, for example. And Slot's idea behind having bigger squads means that not only is he going to be giving these players experience of what it's like to be part of a first team and to be part of a squad for this time, sometimes when a game is won, then there's going to be more opportunities to throw them onto the field. So last night being a classic example. As it started, a League Cup semi-final, the expectation is that all 5 of the substitutes would be first team players. It might be a game that's in the balance. Liverpool went into it in a deficit after all, so therefore you need to have every single one of your substitute places for someone who's going to make sure that they elevate the performance. And yet, we got to a situation where 15 minutes to go, it pretty much looked like the game was won. Liverpool had a 3-0 lead, and even if Spurs got another goal, Liverpool would still be going through with that scoreline. And so there was an opportunity there for Arne Slot to throw on one of those younger players. And he admitted as much, that if he had had them on the squad in the substitutes bench, he probably would have put them on. And that's kind of a fascinating insight for me, because it shows that he really doesn't just pay lip service to the academy. He really does believe in it. He really wants to develop these players and be able to use them, not just kind of hoping that they can sell them on for profit, as you see at quite a few other clubs. He wants to be able to give them minutes in this Liverpool side. Obviously, there are times when it's more difficult, but the idea of him having the ability to have them in the squad means that yes, he can use them. And I think he kind of anticipated some of the backlash towards this, particularly from some of the smaller teams who were like, oh, well, this is just going to be something that benefits the big teams. You got more good players, you just want a bigger squad, etc., etc. You want to hoover up all the players, yada, yada, yada. But that's not really what it's about. It's not about hoovering up good players who could play for other teams. It's about, as he mentioned, younger players, the ones who are just starting out. For some who maybe he doesn't want to send them out on loan because in case there's an injury, he wants to keep them within the squad. But this is a way where maybe they have a more chance of getting minutes. I'm not entirely sure whether or not it will catch on. It feels like one of those things that a hill that maybe Arne himself is going to die on. I know that Jurgen Klopp had quite a few of those and didn't really make much headway in them. So we'll have to wait and see whether the Premier League have any new plans to bring in 23 players. The one thing I will say about it though, it's a lot harder to do when you do have injuries. So if, for example, Liverpool got a situation where they've got 5, 6, 7 players out injured, finding a squad of 23 might be a little bit more difficult than Arne Slot is envisaging. But it's still a nice idea, and as I say, it's evidence the fact that our manager really does care about using the kids, which is something that all of them can take credit and take some heart for. Now it's time for me to ask Arne, and my question was all about those fringe players and exactly how they would react to getting their chance and whether individual ambitions would overtake the team ideas.
Hi Arne, you spoke earlier about the difficulty of leaving players out of the squad when they've been fit and training well. Depending upon obviously the outcome of this game and maybe a subsequent draw, this could be the last game of the season for some players in the squad. So in that desire to impress and maybe stay involved, is there a danger maybe their performance is more about their individual ambitions rather than those of the team? And is this something that you've maybe discussed with some of them?
No, I don't discuss this. If I have to discuss this now, I didn't do my work properly for the first 6, 7 or 8 months. I think I tried to convince them every single day that only the individual performance can be of a high level if the team performance is of a high level. And if they now think that they need to do individual things to get playing time with me, then I did something wrong in the past 7 or 8 months. They don't get playing time because they score 3 goals or have a great attacking. They first of all need to work as hard for the team as, for example, the players did yesterday. And if you cannot bring this, then you have hardly any chance to come into the team. If you do bring this, then I'm not judging them on quality because I know all of them have quality. So then sometimes you have a good game, sometimes you have an okay game. But the only thing the standard is that you work incredibly hard, and that's the only chance you have to come into this team.
Arne Slot left us all in absolutely no doubt about this question. He did not want his players thinking about their own personal ideas above those of the team, and in fact that would absolutely work against them. It's clear that this is something that he absolutely laid the law down of very early on in the season, back in pre-season when he first arrived, and you can understand why, because in that pre-season all of the young players saw it as a clean slate, an opportunity to impress a brand new manager, and they probably would have seen so many of their peers going out on loan here, there and everywhere, and would have been fearful for what that meant about their future. And in that environment, it's easy for players, particularly younger players, to start thinking, well, I've got to do something important, I've got to do something flashy that he'll remember. But Slot was like, no, this is the opposite of what you need to do. What you need to do is show me that you can fit within the team structure. You work hard and show that you understand exactly what I'm asking you to do. And as it's turned out, that's exactly what's happened. And I asked the question, but the reality is that I did believe that most of the players in the squad wouldn't let that get in the way of them. I don't think we've got those kind of players. I think part of the reason why I came up with this question was something that a good friend of mine, Phil Blundell, mentioned around the PSV game, when there was an opportunity for Tyler Morton late on in the game to maybe pass the ball to Quansah, who would have been cleared through on goal, but he decided to take a shot. Now for Tyler, he is very much in a situation where he's probably thinking beyond Liverpool. He probably knows that he's not going to get the opportunities as a Liverpool player, so he kind of wants to put some stuff on tape, so to speak, for other teams to be able to say, okay, well, this is a guy who we can use. He can do X, he can do Y. Again, which is why it's such a shame that he's not going to be fit for this game against Plymouth. But I think if you look at the guy who started the game against PSV ahead of him, James McConnell, he's a perfect example of exactly what Arne Slot is talking about, because he made a very big impression on all of us and on Arne Slot in that game. And what did he do? What was the one thing that stood out? Was there a flashy moment? Was there a step over? Was there a drop of the shoulder? Did he try and blam it in from 25 yards? No. He just diligently did his job again and again and again. Passed it simple, passed it quickly, passed it efficiently, intercepted, blocked passing lanes, did everything that you want from an all-action midfielder. And what did it do? It meant that he didn't end up going out on loan, and it meant that he probably is going to have a starring role in this game against Plymouth. So that's the message from Arne Slot. Keep doing what you're doing, and the rewards will come. And it sounds like most of the squad believe and trust that that's the case, and hopefully we'll get to see the fruits of that against Plymouth. So there you have it, another press conference review in the can. I have some announcements for you. As always, I want to tell you about my writing first of all. I did a match report for the game last night on Substack. It's fresh and hot off the presses, so if you're still feeling the warm afterglow of reaching the League Cup final, you can go and read it there. I've also got a new column from This is Anfield that's coming out imminently, talking about Liverpool's lack of interest in the January transfer window and what that means and why it occurred. On Monday, we've got another episode of The Late Challenge for you to all get used to and get excited about. I'm really enjoying my time with Robbo. It's something that I missed. We used to do shows together on the Anfield Wrap all the time, and I really enjoy it. And he's someone who I've got a really good friendship with anyway, and I like to think that comes out in the show, so you can watch it there. I am also still doing Anfield Wrap shows. We had Talking Reds on Wednesday. I've got a couple of other shows coming up next week. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I have my American tour coming up in March. I will be in Boston on Wednesday, March the 19th. I'll be in New York on Friday, March the 21st. And I'll be in Philadelphia on Sunday, March the 23rd. So 3 shows across that international break week. It's going to be me talking about the Reds, talking about what I do with all of this, talking about what I do with the likes of Robbo and with the Anfield Wrap and with LFC TV and everywhere else you can find me. But then also, it's going to be me DJing later on in the evening, playing some of my favourite LFC flavoured tunes and just some of my other favourite songs. So it's 2 shows for the price of 1. Stay tuned. I will be very soon giving you all the details of exactly how you can buy tickets, so stay tuned for that. And before we go, there's one more thing I wanted to ask. I've got a few of you who have some interesting things to say about this channel itself. Some of you maybe don't like the starting music, some of you maybe aren't enamored with the background, but I take all of your feedback on board. So what I want to know is, what other ideas and what other advice would you have for me? Be kind, no need to be disrespectful, but I am very much interested in what you have to say. A lot of the time I'll look at the analytics of these videos, and it's interesting to see how many of the views come from new people and how many of the views come from my subscribers. So to all of you subscribers out there, I really want to know exactly what it is you're looking for, what you think I'm doing well, what you think I can improve on. I'm a big boy, I can take it. And hopefully you'll be able to take more of this in the next one coming up midweek. I'll see you soon.